The fuck? The fuck? The fuck? The fuck? Heath? You're awake. What a relief. Heath, who'd been sitting on the floor, rose up to kneel beside my bed. We were starting to get a little worried. Oh, okay. Is he here because he's worried about me because I was... What? Huh? How long was I asleep? A little while now, ever since you got back. He blinked at me, his brow knitting in concern. You disappeared earlier this evening. No one saw you go out, but when Cherise sent me to check on you, you weren't inside your room. We went searching for you, but nobody could find you anywhere. Then, about an hour ago, I came to check your room again, and you were right here in your bed, sound asleep. Did you find a way to sneak out? Yes, I slithered through the vents and noodled my way outside. I like that. I like that. And noodled my way outside. I don't know, that's just funny. I have no idea, Heath. I just remember having vivid dreams. That's strange. His soft voice betrayed an obvious curiosity, although he also sounded slightly uneasy. If you were dreaming, it's possible you sleepwalked or someone snuck you out somehow. Maybe I never really left the hotel. That's possible. The security cameras and guards by the exits never saw you. But nobody felt your presence inside the hotel either, which makes it even stranger. That is strange. Well, you should go back to sleep if you can. Heath took a step back, brushing a hand through his pale hair. The sun's almost come up. You were out the whole night. Thanks for watching over me, Heath. Of course, I'm happy you're alright, Valkii. I can't not be nice to him if I see the option. His voice seemed to carry a touch of wistfulness, but he smiled sweetly at me anyway. Sleep well. And stay safe on any mysterious adventures. Reaching for a cigarette, Heath made his way to the door, quietly closing it behind him. What he said must have been accurate because my body already felt tired again, as if I'd travelled a long distance. And so, without protest, I sank back into another deep slumber. This time without a single dream. So what happened there? I wonder what happened there. When I awoke again, there was no sign of a message from Cherise. Nothing from Markus either, just the aftershock of that bizarre dream lingering in my head. For once, then, I had a completely free night. Still, despite my immortal lifespan, I felt like I probably shouldn't laze around in bed or watch the entire VHS collection of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that, for some reason, was tucked into my TV cabinet. Instead, something much stronger was tempting me, a meeting with the Golgotha leader. The master who that man mentioned, the father of secrets I'd seen in my dream. I felt a strange, insistent pull towards him, towards the cemetery. It was like an unseen will tangling with my own. My gut feeling told me I'd be safe. If he'd really wanted to kill me or capture me, I'd already given him plenty of chances. But before I went to meet him, I needed to feed again. Venturing somewhere potentially dangerous without fresh blood seemed like a bad idea. Oh, David. Just a few seconds later after I knocked on David's door. Hello, Valkii. I'm ready. I had to deal with this, with him being like, hello, mistress. It was just weird. It just, like, creeped me out. David almost threw himself into my arms as if he'd been waiting for this moment all his life. I pulled him close, sinking my fangs into his warm, exposed neck. He whimpered and squirmed in delight. I could feel his rapid heartbeat pounding in a delirious rhythm. The more I drank, the more he relaxed in my arms, until I was nearly supporting his full body weight. When I finally had my fill, I let David go back to his room, and he stumbled away in half-conscious bliss. Because Hollyfield Cemetery was a little too far to walk, I hailed a cab and settled down in my seat, gazing out at the distant moon. Living in a graveyard was an interesting choice even for a vampire. The irony had to be deliberate. It shouldn't have been that strange since we were all dead, clinically speaking, but most vampires didn't seem to flaunt that fact. The entrance to the cemetery almost looked like it belonged to a mansion. I reached out to testingly push the elegant, towering iron gates, wondering if they were locked. But they loudly creaked open at the first hint of my touch, all too eager to beckon me inside. With some hesitation, I stepped onto the little path that wound through a maze of graves. It was dark, almost unnaturally dark, and a thin mist curled sluggishly among the headstones. I couldn't deny the cemetery's haunting beauty. The watchful statues, the towering trees, the rigid lamps that cast an eerie sheen on whatever they struck. Everything seemed preserved in time. Far in the distance, I saw the city lights glowing brightly, like electric fireflies drifting through darkness. My eyes fell from glittering skyscrapers down to the cold grey tombstones surrounding me. The atmosphere of graveyards like this made me feel intrigued, why not? The dead kept many secrets, and it was like those secrets had sunken into the soil, filling the ground with their dark, macabre presence. It was one of those mysteries you could never really solve, a constant unknown. And for that very reason, I was fascinated. Following the path, I headed deeper into the graveyard, forcing myself to stay on high alert. Everyone seemed either terrified of this man or reluctant to even speak his name. Considering the power and confidence of most vampires I'd met so far, that was no small feat. But after wandering around for several minutes, I couldn't find anyone. Maybe I'd missed him, or else Zhang had pulled some kind of prank on me. There wasn't exactly a doorbell I could ring, either. Suddenly, I sensed the presence of someone nearby. Like Marcus, it had abruptly appeared instead of slowly growing closer. My eyes darted around to try and spot the source, but I couldn't detect where they were. Until I glanced behind the mausoleum. There, a lone statuesque figure stood with his back to me, gazing up at the moon. The instant I saw him, I knew who he was. The man from my dream. Something about his presence was incredibly calm and controlled. Almost too calm, completely unlike any other human or vampire I'd met. Are you the father of secrets? My voice came out thin and uncertain, nearly carried away by the breeze, but it seemed to reach the man, who slowly turned to face me. His eyes dimly glowed like two beacons in the dark, casting a pale golden sheen onto his face. The figure took a few steps towards me. Maybe the wind drowned them out, but I could have sworn his footsteps in the grass were silent. He stopped a small distance away, gazing me up and down with an aloof curiosity. At last, with a soft inhale, he subtly nodded, maybe to himself more than to me. Welcome to my residence, Valkii. I hope its unorthodox nature does not cause you undue distress. He spoke in a quiet, near monotone, his deep voice oddly soothing. Oh, his name is Andre, that's right. He doesn't begin with an L. Where did I get that from? I am Andre Zabek. It is somewhat traditional for young Golgotha here to address me respectfully as master, but I shall leave that decision to you. No, you're the smiling face from my dream. The corners of his mouth curled faintly upwards at my reply, yet it didn't seem quite like a smile. It appears my message was delivered. I'm pleased you decided to acknowledge it. Only on rare occasions do I extend personal greetings to Los Angeles' latest inductions, but for you, I chose to make an exception. I'm glad. I really wanted to meet you. I am pleased that our curiosity regarding each other is mutual. The glow of Andre's eyes flickered for less than a second, like a lamp brushed by a poltergeist. There are, on occasion, individuals of unique potential and circumstances who are noteworthy enough to attract my interest. Very few vampires have been turned in Los Angeles the past several years, and have managed to survive. Yet you appear to flourish, and nascent as you are in your development, I feel as if you hold great promise. And nascent? I don't know that word. Thank you, damnation seems to suit me. So I see you have taken to our gifts well. Nurture them, and you will find every door in the world lies open before you. He smiled softly at me, if not kindly. I am aware of your employ by Charisse Locke, the Ascari leader and regent of Los Angeles. Her methodology of ruling is disagreeable to me. That is why I seek to subvert it and why I rally others against her. But she is a formidable opponent. While the Mavar seek to fight in the streets, Locke and I battle in the shadows, a duel of assassins and spies. A faint, insidious smile spread across his lips, not quite reaching his eyes. However, as of late, she has begun losing ground to me. I believe that is why, in her desperation, she seeks to mold you into a suitable weapon. Mold me? You think I'm just old cheese to her? No, indeed, something far more valuable. His quiet, calm voice drifting into silence, Andre turned his gaze up towards the moon. The time for an end to this conflict swiftly approaches, Valkii. Either a new ruler will establish domain over the Los Angeles Coven, or else we shall descend into anarchy, the beginning of an inevitable end for our kind. He sounded remarkably placid for such a dramatic statement. Even when I studied his face, I couldn't see any visible traces of emotion. My assistants serve as my eyes and ears. unseen and unheard, absorbing all that would be hidden as they move among the dead. But with the current tension between the houses, their range is limited. Andre fell purposefully silent, allowing his thin smile to finish his implication. Well, maybe I could help with that. Such an agreement may be of mutual benefit to us, I believe. Unlike your arrangement with the Ascari in my employ, you will be treated fairly and with due respect. Join me and I can promise you an elevated seat in the new government I intend to establish. New government, what does that mean? Then it's decided I'll pledge an allegiance to your flag. Alright, I'm interested in working together. Excellent, I am pleased to hear your decision. You may be relieved to hear that I require little from you at this stage. Infrequent reports should suffice. However, I ask that you continue to endure Locke's requests for a short while longer. Your ambiguous affiliation will serve as a pass around Los Angeles with little risk of harm, for now that is. When the time comes to break from her, it will be apparent. You're right, I'll deal with her until then. I truly sympathize with your plight, young Golgotha. We have all been forced to endure unsavory situations for the sake of future progress, as the gears of advancement are only turned through suffering. He inclined his head serenely, though his eyes never shifted from my face. I believe that concludes our business for tonight, as I must attend to several arrangements. However, please visit me again at your earliest convenience. There is a great deal more for us to discuss. So, I assume that gave me a big boosty boost. It did not. I don't think. Or did it? I can't tell. I can never tell. I do feel like this is okay. It's not good, is it? After Andre's polite dismissal, I left the mausoleum behind, heading back down the empty path. All the way back to the graveyard's entrance, I couldn't shake the strange feeling of presences surrounding me, but they were too muddled to really identify. Luckily, I managed to catch a passing taxi not far from the cemetery. By the time we drove back into Hollywood, sunrise was still several hours away. Something about the graveyard had left me feeling restless, so I decided to pay a visit somewhere. Okay, let's see if we can get some Ascari rep. We need to go to Saturnalia, and I know Heath's going to be there tonight, but we're not talking. Oh, should we talk? Because something new might be there. No, I'm not going to do it. I had the taxi drive me to Saturnalia and watched through my windows as downtown LA glittered into view. There was no sign of Heath tonight, only some Ascari. Oh no, he's not there, okay. Only some Ascari quietly nursing their drinks. I thought I remembered their faces from the hotel, but I wasn't sure. Chat with the patrons. The bar's patrons were an interesting bunch this night. A former porn director, a depressed singer who'd failed to make it big, a supposedly dead politician, and an Elvis impersonator. All of them were Ascari, and while the director and politician worked for Charisse, the singer and not Elvis were unaffiliated loners. When I first struck up a conversation with the unhappy singer, the others were off by themselves, looking more lonely than anything, but after they saw us chatting, they drifted over one by one until all 5 of us were lounging by the bar and exchanging backstories. It was only a matter of time before the subject of politics reared its ugly head, though. The politician started dropping hints that the singer could find some renewed attention among the Ascari if she aligned herself with the faction. She seemed hesitant but torn, and soon she turned to me to ask for my thoughts. I told her to meet with Charisse and make her own decision. I convinced her to think things over carefully, but acknowledged that this faction might be a good fit for her. She seemed grateful for my neutral reply and said she tried to get a meeting with Charisse whenever she could. That should have got me up a little bit. It did, a little bit. Our conversation continued for a little while after that, though eventually the group began to disperse. The newly arrived patrons didn't seem as interesting, so I decided to head somewhere else for the night. Okay. How many nights are they? 5, okay. We're on night 3. Where is... I can't get any Mavarep tonight, because apparently a lot of them are only Randall route only. I can go back to the hotel. Oh, sorry, I was I was not expecting this to happen, but I forgot this happened. At first, I couldn't. Okay, when it was someone's watching us. At first, I couldn't tell where it was coming from, since there were several people wandering up and down the street. But when I turned towards the entrance to an alley, I spotted a scrawny, dark-haired figure peering at me from the shadows. Go over to them. This is a good way to make rep. Pulled by my curiosity, I decided to wander closer to the figure. A part of me expected them to run off as I got closer, but they didn't move. They look like the main character in Persona 5, a little bit. When I finally stood in front of them, two bright red eyes stared at me curiously. Oh, hey. I was wondering if you were ever going to come over. I thought I might need to wave a flag or something to get your attention. She spoke in a quiet, slightly husky voice, a hint of fangs flashing between her words. When I focused on her presence, I could tell she was a Golgotha. Hello, Small Sybil. Small Sybil, I like that. A lot better than some of the other nicknames I get here. I don't even know what that is referencing to. She reached up to scratch her cheek, squinting at me curiously. I'm Morgan. Can't remember your name, but your face matches everything I've heard. Trailing off for a moment, Morgan leaned forward a little, her red eyes slightly glassy behind the lenses. You know, I think you'd really be able to see it out there one day. Space. Oh. She knows about my dream? Maybe one day. Yeah, maybe at the end of everything. Wish I could be there. Morgan let out a faint sigh, pushing up her glasses. So why did you want me to come over here again? Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Too much mixed up stuff in my head when I look at you. She muttered the last few words under her breath as if it were my fault somehow. I was actually wondering if you could do me a favor, because you look like a pretty capable kind of girl. See, I came here a few months ago and I've been trying to get a meeting with Andre, but holy hell is his schedule booked. You smell like the graveyard though, so I figure you must be tight with him. Could you ask Andre to bump me up to the top of his queue so I could meet him sooner? She perked her brows upward, eyes glinting at me hopefully. If you do, I could... don't really know how to say it. Kind of shimmy my way into a few people's dreams, help boost their opinion of you. Iskari, Golgotha, whatever. See, since she can do this, I feel like this is... Marcus can also do this, right? Sound like a deal? Fair enough, I'll talk to him soon and put in a word for you. Cool, which house do you want me to poke at? Fucking boost me with the Iskari. Got it. I heard a faint popping sound and glanced down to see Morgan cracking the knuckles of one hand. Right, well, that was the only thing I wanted, so, you can go now. Bye. Did that already get set in motion, or is it actually going to wait until tomorrow? I don't think it did anything, so I think it'll go tomorrow. After her last words, I left Morgan to lurk in the shadows by herself, heading back to catch another cab. Heading back to the graveyard would be too long of a drive, but I could always ask Andre during my next visit. We're going back to the hotel room because we can talk to some more Iskari here. There were a few groups of Iskari clustered in the lobby tonight, engaged in quiet conversation, occasionally sprinkled with laughter. They seemed preoccupied with their own chatter, but I spotted another, more unusual pair sitting nearby. One of Sharice's agents and a human. Alright, what does it want me to do? It wants me to approach the agent. Curious, I wandered over to the seated pair, wondering what a human was doing in the lobby. I doubted he was somebody's blood pet, a middle-aged, slightly overweight man, fidgeting beside the agent as he nervously dabbed the sweat on his forehead with a handkerchief. Ah, hello. The agent sitting beside him greeted me stiffly when I walked up. His voice came out slightly strained, like he was trying to bite back frustration. Hello, is something wrong? No, not exactly. The agent hesitated for a moment. Oh, who's this? I glanced down to see the human peering at me with an embarrassed, flustered smile. This is Valkii. She's an informal agent under Miss Locke. Valkii, this is Mr. Saxby, a very respectable and successful businessman and one of the latest candidates to become an Iskari. He'd be a very important addition to our cause, but he has some reservations about the unlife. Clearing his throat, the agent raised his brow at me pointedly. Ah, right. Saxby gave an awkward chuckle, and I could practically see fresh beads of sweat popping up from his pores. Well, I know it sounds pretty silly, but I'm a little worried about love. You can see for yourself what I look like. I can't find a woman who loves me as a human. I don't really think it'll get better as a vampire either. A nervous, self-deprecating smile flashed over Saxby's face before it fell away like the drops of glistening perspiration on his brow. It seems like most vampires are still so young and beautiful, and you know, I keep asking myself, is there really a vampire out there who would love me? This fine man here says I'll find them eventually, but sometimes I just don't know. The love you take is equal to the love you make. Well, that's a bit of a funny way to put it, but you're probably right. Maybe I was just looking at things wrong. He rubbed a hand along his cheek, looking a little bewildered, but also slightly more at ease. Thank you for your thoughts, Valkii. Mr. Saxby and I are going to discuss things a little further, so if you'd excuse us. When he tapped a hand on Saxby's shoulder, the man nervously hopped to his feet, adjusting his tie as he followed the Ascari into the hall. I watched them go, observing the falling sweat droplets that Saxby left in his wake. Let's see how much that boosted me. It didn't boost me that much at all. I don't think any of these people really want to like me. They're not even trying. I guess I'll go see Marcus. I don't really have anyone else to talk to. Did I go back to my room? Okay. I didn't mean to end. Was that right? I don't think that was right. I still think I had somewhere else to go. Did I just give in for the night? I don't know. I ended my night... Wait, can I look back in the text? Leave. I guess, whatever. I ended my night there with a sense of uncertainty lurking in the back of my mind. When I curled up and closed my eyes, I felt like I could see Andre's glowing gaze, his low voice resonating like a double bass. The time for an end to this conflict swiftly approaches, he'd said. Those ominous words circled through my thoughts as I drifted into a light, restless sleep. But just as I'd finally fallen into a deeper rest, ring ring. The phone jolted me back awake. Yeah, why not? Rubbing my eyes, I reached out to grab the receiver. Hello, this is Valkii. Nonsense, why? I'm certain this is the President's personal number. You won't be fooling me twice, William, you rogue. Marcus, shut up. Oh dear, I suppose I must have misplaced a few digits. Well, hello, Valkii. Marcus's deep voice purred over the line. What made you call at this hour? It's already morning. I called at this hour mostly to make you ask that question, though not entirely. An impish chuckle filtered into my ear. In fact, I have an invitation for you. I thought we might go on a grand sweeping adventure tomorrow. Ferry your fine self over to my shop around, 9 o'clock or so. A grand adventure, I do like adventures. That's what they all say until they end up on one of mine, His delighted chuckle echoed over the line. In the background of the call, I thought I could faintly hear the crackle of a TV channel. Then I'll be seeing you ere long, Valkii. Oh, and should you stumble upon Dream Marcus again, do remind him of the $5 he owes me. That rascal, my goodness. So he does know about the dream. Okay. After the call ended, I tried to settle back to sleep, but I couldn't sink into anything more than a restless doze. I felt like if I brought up the dream then, he wouldn't want to talk about it. Like, he wouldn't want to talk about it as somewhere impersonal as over the phone. That's the feeling I got. By the time the sun finally slipped down over the horizon, I felt more tired than refreshed, but staying in bed probably wouldn't achieve anything except a fussy Marcus. After dressing myself, I left the lobby hotel as discreetly as I could, wandering a few blocks away to catch a taxi. After that beach incident, Charisse probably wouldn't be too thrilled about me visiting Marcus, so it was worth the extra effort to be a little more secretive. As my driver cruised towards the shop, I gazed out at the sparkling night. Getting my hopes up was a bad idea, but maybe Marcus would explain a little more about the dream in person. More than likely, though, I'd just leave with more questions than answers, like always. Extremely true. I'm just gonna take a drink. The taxi dropped me off right outside Blood and Roses, zooming off as soon as I stepped out. But as I approached the shop's door, it suddenly flung open. Wow, what a joke. Really sad, isn't it? Several burly vampires stepped out, laughing loudly. I could instantly tell they were Mavar, although something about them felt different. They didn't seem to notice me, continuing down the sidewalk while they chuckled to themselves. As I watched them walk away, an uncomfortable knot tied itself in my stomach. Something was wrong. Hurrying up to the door, I pushed my way through. The moment I stepped inside the shop, An acidic smell burned my senses. My eyes darted back and forth, searching for Marcus. I sensed him here, but where? Just as I was starting to wonder if he'd left, I noticed something on the ground just behind a shelf. Oh my god. Marcus lay there silently staring up at the ceiling. A dark pool of blood had formed around his head, soaking into the carpet. Oh my god, Marcus? His eyes slowly closed. Then, with a slight nudge of his head, Marcus Mocha's... I'm losing my mind. Marcus motioned for me to kneel beside him. Deep gashes were cut into his arms and face, spilling a constant stream of red. His wounds were sealing over, but slowly. They must have been from the Mavar's claws. Marcus, what happened? Shh. Groaning softly, Marcus brought a finger to his lips. Then, with a wet, painful cough, he reached out for my hand, holding it in his weak grasp. I can see it again. I can see it so clearly. His voice was soft and full of relief, just like his blissful smile. Such a pretty day. So many people are here. What a happy ending. So warm, feeling like this. Just talking about something in the news, in love. All of us, blessed. A long sigh made his chest gently rise and fall. Even though his injuries were mending themselves, he'd already lost a huge amount of blood. Rip off my shirt to bind his wounds. Why not? Let's be dramatic. Grabbing my shirt, I tore off a long strip from the side, but when I reached out to bind the gashes on Marcus's arm, no. He grabbed my hand again, gently pushing it back down. It's so quiet and calm, Valkii, like the bottom of the ocean. Wouldn't it be nice to stay there, together? He squeezed my hand, gazing at me with cadaver eyes. Just a warm summer day, not a trace of suffering, and love everywhere. Nothing strange and nothing sad. The last word left his lips in little more than a longing sigh. That place isn't real, I'm sorry. Marcus gritted his teeth, swallowing hard as if to hold back tears. The glow of his eyes seemed to flicker, making his cheeks shine corpse blue. I don't know what to say. I don't want to say that exactly, but this will be like a pivotal moment in getting his special ending, I feel like. I'm gonna save, and if I don't like one option, I'm gonna test out another one. Stop it. I'm gonna bind your injuries. You're not dying on me. Marcus slowly, firmly shook his head. There was something horribly wrong with the look on his face. I'm gonna choose the other one. She's no, please, there's so much left for us to do together. It looks like it's gonna be the same answer. Yeah. Marcus slowly, firmly shook his head. There was something horribly wrong with the look on his face. Let me out of here. God, that's creepy. Suddenly his eyes flew open. They stared directly at me, widening in horror and revulsion. What is? Have you always been? His body roughly jerked and shuddered. Painful gasps tore out of his mouth as he writhed on the floor, convulsing. Cole. Curling into a fetal position, Marcus gritted his teeth together, staring with pure terror at something invisible. I ran over to the phone. There was no way he'd be able to answer me like this. I'd just have to guess for myself. I don't know who he wants me to call. I ran over to the counter, snatching up Marcus's phone. Right next to it, I spotted a yellow business pad with numbers scribbled in the lines, but I only recognized 3 names. Randall, Alicia, and Charisse. Fuck, I don't know who I'm supposed to call. This is definitely a save point, because if I mean, maybe none of them are right. I'm gonna call Alicia and see what happens there. Alicia was a human, but she obviously cared about Marcus. Maybe, just maybe, she'd know of a way to help. I quickly dialed her number, wondering if the list of digits were for her home or her number, or the club. Hello, darling. Alicia, I need your I'm not at the phone right now, so leave me a message with all the sweet nothings you'd like to say. I promise I'll always listen. Bye now. It was an answering machine. A soft beep followed her recorded words before the line sank into patient silence. You have to come to Blood and Roses as soon as you can. I can't explain this message, but it's about Marcus. Please help. With that, I hung up. Unless she'd been right by the phone, she probably wouldn't hear it in time. Where did that leave me? I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I really don't. Let's go back and check on him. Pushing the phone aside, I hurried back to where I'd left Marcus. As I rounded the corner of the shelves, I was almost afraid to look at the floor. Marcus was gazing at me, his face exhausted and drained, but lucid. I'm alive, Valkii. His soft murmur slowly sank like an anchor thrown to the bottom of the ocean. I think I'm alive. Don't you worry, it's going to be all right. A cheerful voice sang out from the TV speakers. His words mingled with the tinny sound of a keyboard backed by a bouncing beat. I glanced up to see the opening of Baywatch, where a lineup of plastic grins and perfectly toned bodies flashed by. 'Cause I'm always ready. I will let you out of my sight. I don't know what the song sounds like. As Jimmy Jamison's I'm Always Here slowly faded into the background, Marcus let out a quiet exhale. We were sitting on the floor behind the counter, leaning back against it. I'd carefully wiped the blood from Marcus's injuries, which had sealed over to an almost disturbing perfection, like they'd never been there at all. But his torn shirt wasn't as skilled at mending itself, so I pulled his coat back on him instead. He looked the same as he always did, only without his sunglasses. And yet, as he sat beside me silently, staring off into space with a disturbed look in his eyes, I had a feeling he was far from his normal self inside. That wasn't the first time. His quiet murmur rose through the silence. There was a long pause before Marcus spoke again, his voice halting and uncertain. Death has brushed by me over and over again. I know his face well. But never has he pulled me so far down before. I'm just relieved you're okay. I didn't know what would happen. Nor did I, Valkii. He opened his mouth again as if to speak, but hesitated. Our eyes met, and I could see him searching my gaze for something, more warily than I was used to. For a few moments, I didn't want to come back. The hands that pulled me down were soft and sweet, so hard to struggle against. He spread the fingers of his right hand, turning over to stare at his bone-white palm. And their words were such enticing poison, though I dare not repeat them. Then what helped you get back? I simply had this deep, gnawing sensation that I wasn't supposed to sink. No physical force pulled me away, but rather a force within my mind, as if I controlled my body, but something else controlled me. A hint of fear shivered through his voice, something I'd never really heard from him. But at that moment, I thought of all I had left to accomplish, the promises to myself I still needed to fulfill, and the dark truths that yet called my name. And the odd, cruel surface yanked me free. Marcus's faintly whispered words sank into silence. When I cast him a side glance, it felt like I was watching a flickering flame ready to be blown out by the wind. The silence wasn't a comfortable one, so I started to offer a reply. The sound of shattering glass made me jolt. Marcus went completely still. His gaze flicked over to meet mine, holding no emotion, only telling me not to move. Oh, Marcus, someone called his name mockingly. A moment later, I heard the door slamming open. You figured we were done with you, huh? Did you really think we'd just leave you alive for no reason? Footsteps started to shuffle inside, heavy boots thudding on the carpet. Maybe I should have called Randall. I'll see you in the next one.